The first thing Tristan lost was the orchestra, not the audience, not the cameras, not even the smile. The orchestra. 100 musicians stopped following him at the same time. The Royal Opera House went from music to chaos in less than 8 seconds. The Tristan stood on the podium in a black tailcoat, baton flashing under the lights, trying to force the breast section into a rhythm they had already left behind. The score had shifted. 7-8 against 4-4, strings subdividing. Percussion entering on a phrase Tristan did not understand, the woodwinds holding a dissonance that required a conductor who could actually hear where the structure was going. He waved harder. That made it worse. The violins split. The brass crashed across them. A horn entered 2 beats early. A percussionist stopped. Then Maestro Alistair Gray, first chair violinist and one of the most respected musicians in Europe, lowered his bow. One by one the orchestra followed. Silence. 3,000 people sat frozen beneath gold balconies. Millions more watched the live stream. Tristan stared at the orchestra. "What are you doing?" Alistair stood. His voice did not need a microphone. Waiting for the conductor, a murmur moved through the audience. Tristan laughed nervously. "I am the conductor." "No." Alistair lifted the score. "You are waving 4-4 through a 7-8 transition." Tristan's face changed. "It's interpretive." "No." Alistair turned 1 page, then explained the metric modulation here. Tristan stared. Nothing. Alistair waited. The camera zoomed in. Tristan swallowed. "That section is. What is the subdivision?" No answer. "What is the harmonic pivot?" No answer. "What is the notation above the low strings?" Tristan's hand tightened around the baton. Alistair looked disgusted now. "Do you even read this score?" The audience gasped. Backstage, I felt the vibrations through the polished floor. Not sound. Not the way everyone else experienced it. Pressure. Movement. The orchestra had stopped, but the building still carried footsteps, shifting chairs, camera rigs rolling across platforms, thousands of bodies reacting at once. I stood behind the velvet curtain, holding a black binder to my chest. My original manuscripts, dated, annotated, mine. My hearing had been gone for 3 years, but my music had not. A stage manager looked at me. "Ready?" I nodded. The curtain opened. I walked out. Tristan saw me first. His mouth opened. Then my mother. Front row. Cassandra Hale went white. Father Donovan grabs the armrest beside her. They had thought I was still locked in the basement. They had thought the final score was another product, another thing they could carry upstairs, with Tristan's name printed on top. They had no idea Maestro Alistair had received copies of my earlier work. No idea a lawyer had been preserving my authorship evidence. No idea investigators were waiting outside. The Relay to Opera House had agreed to let the performance continue only long enough to establish the professional fraud in front of witnesses. I walked toward the podium. Tristan Dace backed away. "Sera?" His voice reached me only through the interpreters standing at stage left. She signed, "Sera." I looked at him, then signed 1 word. "Fraud." The audience did not understand yet. The interpreter spoke into the microphone. "She says, fraud." Tristan dropped the baton. I handed Alistair the binder. He opened it. Page 1. My handwriting. Page 20. My handwriting. Page 20. From a shorthand, page 83. A notation system I'd created after losing my hearing, tiny geometric marks showing how I experienced vibration through the piano frame and floor. Alistair held the manuscript toward the camera. "This is the work of Sera Hale." The audience erupted. My mother stood. "We're leaving," securely blocked the aisle. My father shouted, "Move!" They did not. Alistair turned another page, then looked at Tristan. "Would you like to explain a tactile notation?" Tristan stared. He couldn't, because he had never written a note of it. Because for 3 years my hands had produced music while his name collected applause. And because for 3 years my family believed taking my hearing meant taking my authorship. They were wrong. To understand how I ended up on that stage, deaf, scarred, and carrying the truth in my own handwriting, I have to go back to before silence. I was 5 when I first understood music could change the shape of a room. My mother played piano badly. Not terrible, just aggressively average. She liked dramatic pieces because they made dinner guests stop talking. One afternoon, after she left the bench, I climbed up. My feet did not reach the pedals. I played the melody she had been practicing, then changed one chord, then another. My father walked in. "Who taught you that?" I shrugged. "No one." He stared. "Do it again." I did. That was the first time Donovan Hale looked at me like I had value. For years, I mistook that for love. By 8, I was composing short pieces. By 11, chamber music. By 14, I could hear orchestration in my head faster than I could write it down. My younger brother Tristan could not. He was 2 years younger, confident, photogenic, good posture. He looked like what my parents imagined a prodigy should look like. That mattered more than ability. My family had money, old money by local standards, arts foundation money. Wool money. My grandfather had been a minor composer and major businessman. My father worshipped the idea of legacy. Not art, legacy. He wanted the Hale name on programs, scholarships, concert halls, articles. When I was 12, a teacher suggested I apply to a summer composition program. Dad said no, too early. When Tristan was 12, Dad bought him a private conductor. The conductor quit after 3 months. He doesn't practice. Dad fired him for being negative. At 14, Tristan entered a youth competition with a piano suite. My piano suite. My mother said, "It's just family." I stared. "What? You wrote it here. So, under this roof. That doesn't make it his." Cassandra sighed. "Sera, don't be difficult." Tristan won. A local paper called him a rising genius. I cried in the bathroom, not because he won, because nobody in my family seemed to understand what had been taken. Or they understood perfectly and had already decided it did not matter. After that, the pattern became routine. I wrote. Tristan performed. Dad submitted. Mom managed publicity. I received new paper, new pencils, new instructions. At 16, I refused. Dad stood in my doorway. "Excuse me, I am not writing the concerto. Tristan's audition is in 6 weeks." "Then he should write it. He isn't a composer." I stared. That was the first honest thing Dad ever said about him. Exactly. My father's face hardened. "Your brother carries this family name into rooms you cannot." "Why?" "Because he's built for public life." "What does that mean?" He did not answer. My mother did later. "Daughters marry." I stared. "That's your reason. Do not twist it. You think my work should belong to him because he's a boy." She looked annoyed by the bluntness. "Tristan has charisma. I have the music. Then help him. Help. Him. Help." Family language is dangerous when it means surrender. I kept writing, not because I agreed, because I was 16, financially dependent, and had no adult willing to tell me I was allowed to refuse. But I began keeping copies, everything, original drafts, dates, corrections, audio sketches, not because I expected a crime, because I wanted proof to myself. This is mine. At 17, I met Maestro for the first time. Not personally. He judged a young composer's workshop by anonymous submission. I mailed a movement under my own initials, SH, no family name. It received highest distinction. His written note said, "Whoever wrote this understands tension better than most composers, twice their age." I read that sentence until the paper softened at the folds. For the first time, someone had heard me without hearing Tristan's name first. That gave me courage. I secretly applied to the Lydian Conservatory in Vienna. Composition. Full scholarship competition. I sent my own work. My real name, Sera Hale. The acceptance letter arrived 3 months later. I found it before my parents. That was a miracle. Full scholarship. Residence placement, mentorship track. I read the letter in the pantry because I did not want anyone to see me cry. I had a way out, a real one. 6 weeks, that was all I needed. I made one mistake. I left the envelope in my desk. Tristan found it. He came into my room holding it. "What is this?" My stomach dropped. "Give it back." He laughed. "You applied?" "Yes." "Under your name?" I stood. Whose name should I use? His face changed. He was not jealous. He was afraid. "If you go there, people will compare us." "They already should." "You think you're better?" "I think I wrote your work." He shoved the letter toward me. "You can't go. Watch me." I expected yelling. I expected him to tell Mum and Dad. I did not expect what came next. That night, my father called me downstairs. The basement had once been a rehearsal room. Thick walls, carpet, a grand piano, acoustic treatment. He said, "We need to talk." My mother stood by the door. Tristan sat on a chair. The acceptance letter rested on the piano. I knew. Not what they would do, but that I was not leaving that room freely. Dad said, "You embarrassed us." "No, you applied behind our backs, because you steal my work." My mother snapped, "Enough." I looked at Tristan. He would not meet my eyes. Then Dad said, "You are not going to Vienna. I am 18. Not for another month. Then I'll go in a month." Silence. Tristan stood. "You'll ruin everything." I laughed. "You'll everything." I laughed. "You're everything." He crossed the room. "You have no idea what this family spent building my career. With my music. You always say that, because it's true." He shoved me. Dad grabbed my arms, the next minutes fractured into terror. I will not describe the injuries in graphic detail. What matters is that my family deliberately caused severe damage to my hearing. My father restrained me. Tristan knowingly participated. My mother did not stop them. When it was over, the world changed. Sound became pressure, then distortion, then almost nothing. I remember screaming and not knowing whether I was still making noise. I remember seeing my mother's lips move. I remember Tristan backing away. I remember blood on Dad's cuff. Then darkness. I woke in a private clinic. Not a hospital. A doctor I did not know. Bandages. Pain. My mother held up a tablet. "You had an incident." I stared. She typed again. "Your hearing may not return." I pushed the tablet away. Dad entered. He wrote on paper. "No police." I looked at him. Then another line. "You will stay." I looked at him. Then another line. "You will stay home." Then Tristan's debut is in 9 months. Then Tristan's beat is in Vienna. I stared at the words. My hands started shaking. My mother placed manuscript paper on the bedside table. They had not even waited for the bandages to come off. That was when something in me went quiet in a different way. Not hearing. Hope. The hope that if I explained myself clearly enough, they might love me correctly. At hope ended, they moved me into the basement permanently. Lock outside. Camera, meals, piano, paper, a cot, no internet, no phone, no conservatory. The world was told I had suffered a breakdown and gone abroad for treatment. Tristan publicly announced he was taking time to focus on family. 2 weeks later, he premiered a new chamber piece, mine. I watched on silent television. The captions called him visionary. I laughed. The relation. Sound came back to me. That hurt. For months, I thought my music was gone. Composition had always begun with sound in my head. Now memory remained, but the external world had vanished. The piano keys moved. Strings vibrated. I felt them faintly through the bench. One night, angry, I struck the lowest C as hard as I could. The floor answered a vibration through my feet. I froze, pressed the key again. There, not hearing information. I took off my shoes, pressed one foot against the wooden platform beneath the piano. Low C, low G octave. Different patterns. I touched the piano frame with my palm. Another layer. I began mapping, not because it replaced hearing. It did not, because I still understood pitch mathematically. Intervals, frequency relationships, harmonic structure, rhythm, form. Form. The body can receive more than ears. I spent weeks building a new notation. Small symbols for tactile intensity, beat grouping. Resonance. I would play, feel, write, breathe. Play, feel, write, play. My family thought I was obeying. Good. Obedience is easiest to fake when people already think they own you. Tristan came downstairs once a week. He never learned sign language. He communicated through notes. More brass. Smonger Indian. The press needs something emotional. I would write, "Okay." Inside, I was building evidence. Dated drafts. Unique notation. Corrections only. I understood. I hid copies under a loose panel beneath the piano. I also started watching the basement routine, courier schedule, cleaning, food delivery, Dad office assistant, a postal pickup every Thursday. Escape was not easy. I had tried once. The door had 2 locks, windows sealed. I was not going to risk another violent confrontation without help, so I waited for a safer path. It came through sheet music. Like my parents mailed Tristan's scores through a private courier. One Thursday, the usual courier was late. A younger driver came. He opened the basement door while Mum signed a receipt upstairs. I handed him an envelope. He looked confused. I pointed to the address. Maestro, Alisteria Royal Operas, London. He looked toward the stairs. I pressed my hands together. Please. He hesitated, then put the envelope inside his jacket. The package contained 3 things: my Lydian acceptance letter, copies of earlier manuscripts, 1 page explaining, I am Sera Hell. Tristan Hell does not write the music performed under his name. I am Bang Fang firmly helmed, and Meng held, in Felavis, for the B5 contacting them. No sensational claim, no safantev, no sensational claim, no dramatic plan, just truth. Alistair did not call police immediately. Good. He verified first. He contacted Lydian. They confirmed my application, the anonymous workshop submission, my acceptance. He contacted the music rights attorney. The attorney searched registrations, found inconsistencies. The Tristan's copyrights had been filed through a family holding company after the dates on my drafts. Then a disability rights legal organization became involved. They contacted authorities, quietly. I did not know any of this for weeks. I kept writing. Then, one Thursday, the courier delivered me an envelope hidden beneath a stack of paper. Inside, we believe you. Keep every original. Do not escape if it puts you at risk. Apopot riskate. Help is being coordinated. I sat on the floor and cried, silent, shaking. Belief has a physical frequency too. After that, the plan changed. The Royal Opera debut became an opportunity. Tristan had been invited to conduct a new symphonic work at a global broadcast concert. The score had to be delivered within 3 months. My family wanted masterpiece. I gave them one. But not sabotage in the sense of making the orchestra fail on purpose. That would punish musicians who had done nothing wrong. Instead, I wrote a score that was legitimate, difficult, and unforgiving. A piece requiring real command of meter, real rehearsal. The real understanding. Any trained conductor could study it. Tristan could not. That was the trap. Competence. I built the score around changing meters, layered entrances, and transitions that could not be faked. I copying a rehearsal video. Alistair saw the score before final performance. He understood immediately. This is not a trap, he later told investigators. It is a mirror. Exactly. During rehearsals, Tristan struggled. The orchestra complained. He blamed the copyist, then the percussionist, then the concertmaster. Alistair asked him basic questions privately. Tristan dodged. The production team began recording all rehearsal communication after legal counsel advised preservation. My parents did not notice. They were too busy with publicity. Tristan gave interviews. They called the symphony his most personal work. One reporter asked what inspired the changing meter in the 3rd movement. He said, life is unpredictable. Alistair nearly walked out. The night before the concert, my father came downstairs. He wore a tuxedo jacket over jeans. He held a note. After tomorrow, W.E. discussed the next album. I stared. He smiled, then wrote, you have been good. Good, like I've been good. Like a dog, like a machine that had finally stopped resisting. I took the paper, wrote, thank you. He left satisfied. Wrote, thank you. He left satisfied. The next morning, investigators obtained warrants. The Opera House agreed to keep the performance schedule, not for spectacle, because the live event created a controlled environment where Tristan's professional fraud could be established without warning him prematurely. Police staged at the family home. An advocate waited outside my basement. At 7:42 p.m. London time, Tristan stepped onto the Royal Opera stage. At 7:58, the 3rd movement began. At 8,058, the 3rd movement began. At 8:01, he lost the meter. At 8:02, Alistair stopped the orchestra. At the same moment, police entered the house. I was escorted out. Not alone, not loans, not running in rain with piano wire in my hand. Escorted. Protected. A paramedic checked me. Then I was taken by car to the venue through a private route already arranged by council. I arrived during the public pause. My parents were in the audience. They had no idea the house had already been searched. No idea investigators had found the original medical records. No idea the basement was being photographed. And no idea police had recovered the instruments used during the assault years earlier. No idea my hidden manuscript panel had been opened in front of witnesses. I walked onto the stage, and the story changed owners. After Alistair announced my name, the production screens displayed evidence. Not medical photographs. I refused those. My body was not a slideshow. They showed dates, drafts, copyright filings, my acceptance letter. Video from the basement camera showing me composing while Tristan was publicly claiming authorship elsewhere. A legally obtained clip from family security storage showed Tristan carrying my completed manuscript upstairs. Then one message recovered from his phone. To Dad, if she goes to Vienna, they'll know. Another, you said she'd stay downstairs. Another, I don't care how. Just make sure she can't take the music with her. Tristan sat on the stage floor. The audience no longer looked shocked by his lack of musical skill. They looked horrified by what the skill had been hiding. My mother tried to leave. Opera security stopped her until police arrived. Dad shouted about defamation. Then officers entered. No tackle, no theatrical handcuffing on marble, just arrest. My interpreter stood beside me. Alistair asked, "Do you want to say anything?" I signed. She spoke. My music was never his. Pause. And my silence was never consent. That became the line people quoted. I wish they quoted the second one more. The arrests were only the beginning. My hearing damage was permanent, not total in every frequency, but profound enough that speech remained inaccessible without technology and interpretation. A specialist explained options, devices, surgery for some structural damage. No promise of restoration, I chose what helped. They rejected what didn't. That choice mattered more than outcome. My wrists, arms, and hands were fine. That detail matters because my family had threatened them repeatedly, but never carried out that threat. Threats are still evidence. Fear is still coercion. But I will not add injuries that did not happen. I began learning formal sign language. Not improvised family gestures. A real language. My first instructor, Naomi, was deaf. Capital D. She looked at the way I signed and laughed, sloppy. I understood her through the way I signed and laughed. Sloppy. I understood her through the interpreter. I've had limited practice. She signed back, then practice. No pity. I adored her. For years I had thought deafness was only something taken from me. Naomi showed me a community. History, art, humor, and technology. Choice. I did not become grateful for what happened. Important. Abuse did not give me a gift. But life after abuse contained things my family had never imagined. That distinction saved me from people who wanted to turn trauma into inspiration. The criminal case separated the family roles. Dad had inflicted the physical harm. Mom had enabled, concealed, and participated in confinement and fraud. Tristan had knowingly encouraged the plan that led to my hearing loss and benefited from the confinement afterward. His messages mattered, so did the fact that he was 16 at the time of the original assault and an adult during later years of fraud and coercion. The Lord treated those periods differently. Good. Accountability should be specific. The copyright case was easier. My handwriting, timestamps, Lydian submission, workshop archive, composition metadata, witnesses, the publisher and performance organizations corrected authorship. Royalties were frozen, then redirected through settlement and judgment. Tristan's award were revoked, not all at once. The committees love meetings. One foundation took 6 months to decide whether fraud counted as misconduct. Alistair wrote them one sentence, "If plagiarism does not disqualify a composition prize, please rename the prize." They revoked it the next day. The hardest part was not court. It was composing again without purpose assigned by someone else. For 3 years, every page had been required. Deadline, Tristan. Album, debut. After release, I sat at a piano in a rehabilitation studio and felt nothing. Not physically, emotionally. I pressed low C. The vibration came through the floor. Old friend, I did not write. Next day, nothing. Third day, I wrote one measure, then crossed it out. Naomi asked why I was frustrated. I signed. If I don't write, why am I? She stared at me, then signed. A person WH didn't write today. I laughed. Simple, brutal, freeing. Before I could learn to be ordinary, I had to learn how to live in a world that kept trying to speak around me. The rehabilitation hospital gave me 3 interpreters on rotation. At first, I hated all of them. Not personally. I hated needing them. Every conversation became triangular. Doctor, interpreter, me. Someone would look at the interpreter while discussing my body. I would tap the table, the interpreter would point back at me. Look at her would point back at me. Look at her. That became the first boundary I learned to enforce after captivity. Do not discuss me as if I am not in the room. The audiologist explained the damage slowly. Some inner ear function remained. Speech recognition was severely affected. Certain interventions might help with environmental awareness. Nothing would return the exact hearing I remembered. I asked, "Will I hear an orchestra again?" The interpreter signed my question. The audiologist paused, then answered honestly, "Not in the same way." I cried. That answer hurt more than a false promise would have comforted, but honesty did not become another weapon. It gave me something solid to stand on. Naomi started teaching me sign language twice a week, then 4 times. First, I signed like someone speaking with a mouthful of marbles. I mixed grammar, forgot facial expression, finger-spelled words, that simple signs. Naomi laughed often. One afternoon, after I confused composer with a sign that looked closer to cook, she leaned back and laughed so hard she nearly fell out of her chair. I glared. She signed, "You are very," fell out of her chair. I glared. She signed, "You are very famous cook." I signed back, "Fire you." She signed, "Can't." Voller. That was the first time I experienced deafness without tragedy attached. Just language, embarrassment, humor, life. The legal process around my music was less gentle. The Hale family holding company owned dozens of registrations tied to Tristan. Some pieces had been filed before I turned 18, others after. Contracts had been signed through agencies that assumed a public composer was the real composer. My attorney, Mara Bell, built a wall in her office covered in dates. Draft created. Audio sketch. Family filing. Public premiere. Royalty deposit. Interview. Revision request. It looks like a murder board for sheet music. She pointed at it. Your family made one mistake. Only one. They were greedy. I raised an eyebrow. They kept everything. Emails, version histories, payment trails, royalty statements, messages between Tristan and my father, even scans of my handwritten corrections attached to emails where Tristan asked a copyist to clean up my rough draft. My rough draft? Mara smiled. People committing fraud love documentation when they think the documents prove ownership. The first civil hearing dealt only with temporary control of royalties. Tristan appeared remotely. He wore a suit, no orchestra, no orchestra, no orchestra. He looked younger without lighting. His lawyer argued that our family had always worked collaboratively. The judge asked, "Can Mr. Hale explain the notation system present in these drafts?" His lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Tristan tried. He failed. Again, not dramatically, quietly. He could not explain why triangular marks appeared beneath certain low-register passages, could not explain the pulse grids, could not explain my shorthand. The judge asked me. I explained through an interpreter. The triangles indicated vibration emphasis through contact surfaces. The grids showed subdivision relationships I use after losing hearing access. The room went still. My attorney did not smile. She did not need to. The court froze the royalties. It was not victory. It was containment. Money stopped moving. That mattered because my parents had been using it to fund defense lawyers and private public relations campaigns against me. For months, anonymous articles appeared online. Sera Halaris were never questioned. Family says Traum distances. Tristan's Kera could Singnes Keras could the Gusinen, sibling, desidpa. Sibling dispute. I had to laugh at that one. As if we were arguing over a piano bench, Mara asked whether I wanted to respond publicly. No, good. You expected me to say yes. I expected you to ask how many pages. I smiled. Instead, we released documents, no emotional statement, no interview, just evidence. Lydian Conservatory confirmed my acceptance. The youth competition archive confirmed my anonymous submission. A former teacher identified my compositional fingerprints years before Tristan's public career. The copyist admitted he had received handwritten drafts from my father, but was instructed to never contact the composer directly. The story stopped being, Sera says. It became records show. That difference gave me room to breathe. Like my parents still tried to control the emotional narrative, Mom sent a letter through counsel. She wrote, "We were under enormous pressure to protect the Hale legacy." I read it once, then handed it back. Mara asked, "Keep no." Dad sent nothing. He still believed silence was power. Maybe it had worked too long. Tristan sent a message through his lawyer asking to meet privately. I refused, then accepted 3 months later, not for reconciliation, for clarity. We met in a monitored legal conference room. Interpreter beside me. His lawyer beside him. Tristan looked at my hearing devices, then at my hands. He said, "You look different." The interpreter signed. I answered, "So do you." He smiled weakly. "Then I never wanted all of this." I waited. He continued. "Dad did." "Which part?" He looked down. "The basement." "Which part?" "The injury." "Which part?" The face tightened. "You know what I mean." I signed slowly. "Know what I mean." I signed slowly. "No. Satiety." He looked at the interpreter. She waited. He finally said, "I didn't think he would actually hurt you that badly." The words were almost exactly what he wrote later from prison. I asked, "Why did you give him the tools?" His face went blank. Evidence had already established his involvement. He knew. I was angry. "Because I got into Lydian. Because you were going to destroy everything." I leaned back. There. Same sentence. Years later, still true. What was everything? He looked frustrated. My career, built on my work. Everyone already believed it. So? You could have just gone somewhere else. I stared. He genuinely believed compromise meant I should abandon my name while he kept my music. I signed, "You wanted me gone, not the music." The interpreter spoke. Tristan stopped. That was the center of it. He did not hate the art. He hated the author. He wanted production without personhood. He started crying. I felt nothing I could use. Not satisfaction, not compassion. Just recognition. I stood. Said, "Sera." I stopped. He asked, "Do you think I ever loved you?" That question surprised me. I looked at him for a long time, then signed, "Mame." He almost smiled. Then I continued. "But love that requires me to dizap." That meeting ended my need to understand him. Understanding can become another cage if you mistake it for obligation. The criminal case went forward separately. My father's defense attacked the medical evidence. The injury had happened years earlier. The private clinic records were incomplete. Some staff had been paid cash, but the physical findings matched the timeline. The recovered family messages established intent, and the basement told its own story. Locks, camera, food logs, manuscript schedules. The whiteboard recovered near the piano. Tristan Diddler's 41 Teens, Vine Daddies, my deliverables. That phrase, my father had written it, not daughter. Deliverables. The prosecutor showed it to the jury. No dramatic speech, just silence. Mum Nam testified under a plea agreement. She admitted she knew the basement door locked from outside. Admitted she knew I was not free to leave. Admitted she carried pages upstairs and delivered them to Tristan's management team. Admitted she told relatives I was overseas. Then the prosecutor asked, "Did you believe your daughter wanted to remain in that basement?" Mom started crying. "No." "Did you hope her leave?" "No." That was enough. People later asked me whether watching her testify felt vindicating. Not really. It felt like hearing someone finally use the right nouns. Daughter, basement, locked, no. Truth becomes powerful when euphemisms run out. After the verdicts, the Royal Philharmonic Society offered to host a gala honoring me. I declined. They changed the event into a working symposium on authorship fraud and disability access, as I accepted. No gowns, no awards, panels, from tracks, assistive technology, young composers. Better. At that symposium, I met a 17-year-old percussionist named Eli. He was hard of hearing and had been told by one conservatory that conducting would be impractical. He showed me a tablet system he had built that converted rehearsal cues into visual pulses. I stared. "Who made this? Me? Why? Because they said no." I smiled. Right? Good reason. He became one of the first recipients of a Hale Access grant. Years later, he conducted one of my pieces. Better than Tristan ever could have. Not because justice demanded symmetry, because talent deserves access. That was the first time I understood what I wanted the recovered royalties to become, not a monument to what happened, a bridge around the kinds of gates people pretend are natural. The foundation funded interpreters, adaptive rehearsal tools, legal clinics, emergency housing for young artists leaving controlling families, copyright registration assistance, independent contract review. One policy was non-negotiable. No artist under 21 could have all financial communication routed through a family member without independent access. A board member said, "That's overly specific." I looked at him. "Yes." He nodded. "Keeping it?" "Yes." We kept it. 6 months later, the policy caught a case. A 19-year-old pianist whose father had been redirecting performance income No basement, no physical violence. Still wrong. She got counsel, her own bank account, her own contracts. She kept performing. That was the kind of ending I trusted. Quiet, practical. No one destroyed. Someone simply got ownership of her own name back. I stopped composing for 3 months. I learned to cook badly, walk through museums, took a train alone, bought shoes without asking anyone, ignored 6 interview requests, learned to sleep without a camera in the corner. Then music came back not as duty, as curiosity. I began writing a piece for percussion and low strings designed to be experienced both acoustically and through floor transducers, not music for the deaf. I hated that marketing line. Music with multiple access pathways. Some listeners heard it, some felt it, some did both. Alistair premiered it a year after the trial. I did not conduct. I sat in the audience beside Naomi. When the low percussion entered, the floor moved beneath my shoes. I smiled. Afterward, reviewers called me the silent maestro. I disliked that too. My silence was not a brand. I preferred a composer, just composer. Just composer. Tristan wrote from prison. 1 letter. He said, I was terrified you would leave. I read it twice. Not because I cared about his fear. Because it explained the structure. He was not afraid of losing me. He was afraid of being compared without me supplying the answer. He wrote, I knew Dad would do something. I didn't think he would go that far. Then I handed him the needles because I thought he was only going to scare you. I stopped. The evidence contradicted some of that. Messages showed he had asked Dad to make sure she can't hear the entrance exam. Maybe he had not pictured consequences accurately. Cowards often imagine harm in abstract language, then act surprised when bodies make it real. I did not reply. My father never apologized. My mother did. Years later, a letter began I thought protecting Tristan meant protecting the family. I almost threw it away, then kept reading. She wrote, I understand now that I treated you like the cost. That sentence was accurate. I slaved it. It's not because forgiveness arrived, because truth deserves documentation. I used part of the recovered royalties to build the Hale Access Foundation, not named after my parents. My name. Mine. We funded disabled composers, captioned rehearsals, disabled composers, captioned rehearsals, interpreter access, emergency legal help for young artists whose work was being controlled by family members or managers. The first year, a 17-year-old cellist came to us. Her father controlled every performance contract, every bank account, every interview, no physical violence. But she wanted to stop touring. He refused. She whispered through an interpreter, he says the family needs me. I stared. Different instrument, same sentence. We connected her with counsel. An independent manager, a therapist. She left touring for a year. From a failed, that mattered. People often ask, was exposing Tristan on stage enough? Wrong question. The stage corrected the public record. The courts addressed crimes. The foundation addressed repetition. No single moment balances a life. There is no scale, only what happens next. Alistair became a mentor, not a savior. He was strict. He rejected half my early post-release work. One day I signed, you know I wrote the royal piece. One day I signed, you now I wrote the royal bull here. He signed back badly, irrelevant. I laughed. He pointed to the score. This is lazy. Through the interpreter, I answered. You are cruel. Correct. He made me better. Not because he had authority over me. Because I could leave the room. That became my test for every relationship. Can I leave? Can I say no? Can I disagree? Can I keep my name? If yes, stay. If not, leave. Years after the Opera House scandal, I returned to Vienna. Lydian Conservatory, the scholarship I had lost. They invited me to speak. I almost refused, then accepted on one condition. No inspirational framing. The dean laughed nervously. What should we call the lecture? Authorship. That's it. That's it. I stood in the same hall where my work had once been accepted without my family knowing. Students watched. I signed. An interpreter voiced. Talent is not permission. Pause. That's true. Need is not ownership. Pause. Family is not copyright. A few people smiled. And disability is not the end of artistic authority. That was the real lecture. Afterward, a student asked, if you could hear again, would you choose it? I looked at her. People love hypothetical restoration, I signed. I would choose not to have been harmed. She looked embarrassed. I continued. That is different from wishing away the person I am now. I nodded. Good. My life became quieter in ways I loved. Not silent. Quiet. A studio with a sprung floor. Tactile transducers built into the piano platform. Large windows. A wall of scores. No locks from outside. No camera. I bought the old basement piano at court auction. Everyone thought I was insane. Maybe. I had it restored, not because trauma objects become sacred, because it was a good instrument. The technician found scratches beneath the frame where I had hidden manuscripts. He asked, "Want them sanded out?" I touched them, then shook my head. No, not a shrine, a record. I composed one of my best pieces on that piano. Title, Open Door. The first movement used repeating low frequencies you could feel through the floor. The second introduced silence between patterns. The third brought in strings one by one. The final movement ended with no dramatic chord, just a sustained vibration fading until you had to decide whether it was still there. Critics called it radical. I called it accurate. Life after captivity did not end with a bang. It faded slowly from fear into choice. One morning, years later, I arrived at the Royal Opera House early. No audience, empty seats. Alistair was already there. Older. Still impossible. He handed me a baton. I stared. He signed one word he had learned properly. Try. I laughed. I had resisted conducting because I could not hear the orchestra conventionally. Technology had changed. Visual cue systems, tactile feedback, assistive monitoring. But more importantly, I had changed. I stepped onto the podium. The orchestra was a chamber group. Trusted. Prepared. They watched me. I lifted the baton for 1 second. I saw Tristan. Sweating. Vaking, waving at music he did not understand. Then that image disappeared. I gave the first cue. The floor moved. Strings entered. I could not hear them the way I once heard. I knew them through movement, sight, memory, notation, and the information my body could receive. Not lesser. Different. Mine. After rehearsal, Alistair asked, "Well?" I signed again. He smiled. That became my answer to almost everything worth keeping. Again. Write again. Trust again. Perform again. Not because nothing happened. Because it did. My parents tried to end my relationship with music by damaging the way I received sound. They misunderstood music. They thought it lived in ears. Tristan thought authorship lived in applause. Dad thought ownership lived in control. Mom thought legacy lived in a son. All wrong. Music lived in pattern. Authorship lived in creation. Legacy lived in what survived truth. And I was still there. Not a machine. Not a ghostwriter. Not a broken daughter. Not a revenge symbol. Thera Hale. Composer. The final time I saw Tristan was through a legal video call about royalty restitution. He looked older, smaller. He signed nothing. He had never learned. The interpreter asked if he had anything to say before the agreement closed. He said, "Do you hate me?" I watched his lips. Then the interpreter signed. I thought, then signed back, "I don't believe me life around you anymore." That answer surprised him. It surprised me too. Better than hate. The paperwork closed. Royalties returned. Contracts corrected. Done. That evening, I went to the studio, pressed one bare foot against the floor, played low C. The vibration traveled upward. The same note that had once told me music was still reachable. I closed my eyes. No stage, no cameras, no family. Just the instrument. I wrote 6 measures, crossed out 2, kept 4, then smiled. My family had spent years trying to decide what I was for. Tristan's career, the Hale legacy, the next symphony, the next award, the next lie. They never asked what I wanted, so I built a life around that question. Do I want to write? Do I want to perform? Do I want to stop? Do I want to stay? Do I want to leave? Every answer could change. That was freedom, not revenge, not fame, not money. Choice. The world once watched Tristan stand on a stage and failed to conduct my music. People called that the night I destroyed him. They were wrong. He destroyed himself long before that, the moment he decided my talent belonged to him. The sage only made it visible. What I built afterward belonged to me. every score, every silence, every vibration under my feet, every door I could open, and every time the world tried to turn me into a story about what was taken, I wrote another measure about what remained.